Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Jonathan Bennett joining us. Jonathan is a strategic advisor and executive coach at Clearly Then in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. He was the founder and CEO of Canadian management consulting firm Laridae and is the author of 7 books. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
It's great to be here, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, before we get started, I ask all of my guests this question. Please tell our listeners the short version of your story.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sydney, Australia. That's a little bit about why I have an accent, but I live in Canada. I have a background in writing, and I kind of made my way up through corporate communications. I found myself on the senior team of a large regional hospital here in Canada. And 7 years and 3 COs and a brand new hospital construction build later, I fell over sideways. And I decided I needed to do something different with my life. And what that meant for me at the time was to launch a consulting firm. And over the course of the next 10 years, we grew and scaled that firm and served hundreds of organizations across the country. We became a B Corp. And 2.5 years ago, I sold to one of my employees. So it was a management buyout. And these days, I'm an executive coach and trusted advisor, and I sit on a bunch of corporate boards to keep busy and entertained. So that is the short version.
Well, it wouldn't appear to be obvious that what you do when you fall over after you've had an experience in the corporate world is to start a management consulting business. What was the driver to that?
Foolishness. Who knows? I was exhausted. I think I thought at the time I wanted more control over my time, and I wanted to learn about work and myself in a new and different way. And it had been like an amazing journey. And I'm happy to talk a bit about my time on the senior team of a hospital. But I just wanted my life to look different, and I wanted more control. And I also wanted to serve nonprofit organizations. I had much earlier on in my career been working in and around the nonprofit and charity sector. And I always thought they were poorly served by management consultants. And so much later on, when I'd actually developed the skills and abilities, I thought, that's something that I could really get into. So, I started out doing strategic plans for fairly small nonprofits. And from there, it just kind of grew over time.
Excellent. So if you had to pick one event in your life that just put rocket boosters, was a key accelerant for your career, what would that be?
It would definitely be the time on the senior team of the hospital. So, imagine 2,700 employees, a couple different sites. We were at the time building a new hospital, trying to get the funding and building a new hospital, demolishing the old ones. There were several CEOs. We had to do a financial turnaround. And I just had an unruly and interesting portfolio that started out in corporate communications and public affairs, but ended up with risk management and quality and a bunch of other things that they gave me at various points. And I was just a sponge for it. I learned a ton about reporting up to a board of directors, about just being proximal to really difficult, complex decisions every day. And hospitals are, particularly complex environments. And so I liken it to 3 free MBAs, and I'm very grateful for it. It was also totally exhausting and unsustainable, but it was, as you say, it was rocket fuel for sure.
So were you the guy who was just raising their hand and said, compliance, I can do that?
There was a little bit of that going on, younger and naive and eager, no doubt. But also I was keen to learn and to grow my influence and portfolio and stretch. And I was able to do all that. And I got entrusted with things that I probably wasn't always ready for, but I had some great people around me and lots of good teachers. So it worked out.
That's fantastic. So, Jonathan, getting to the meat of it, in late August and early September of this year, I introduced listeners of my other show, the Saturday Morning Muse, to what I call the growth trap, which I define as leaders driving for business growth for the sake of business growth with little or no regard for operational or cultural implications. I've seen this show up in annual budgeting processes where leaders sit on high in their ivory towers and dictate the number and everybody's got to go get it. And also mergers and acquisitions, which we'll talk about a little later in the show. One of the main underlying drivers of this growth trap is magical thinking, leadership magical thinking, where they imagine that there's actually resource slack when none exists, or they dream that certain skills are available in the organization when they actually don't. So, drawing on your experience from the hospital system as a management consultant and now as an executive coach, how have you seen leadership magical thinking evidence itself, and what kind of damage have you seen happen to teams and businesses?
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's a lovely concept, this idea of magical thinking. I'll tell you where it shows up the most in my work is I coach a lot of founders and that are kind of in the valley of death. You know, they've kind of like, they're past the startup phase, but it's at the hard part where they're adding people, but not necessarily adding margin. The systems and processes aren't always fully fleshed out yet, and they haven't necessarily fully scaled. So they might be less than, let's say, 100 people. And where I see it is founders have, and entrepreneurs, they've got this sort of intense get her done kind of attitude, and they once did it all. Their company, especially if it was bootstrapped, was probably, they were the only person at one point. And, up until there were 10 people, they had their hands in everything. And so when it gets a little bigger, and this can last for a long, long time, you can scale up quite a long way, there's a mentality that sits underneath the founder that I wouldn't have called magical thinking, but now that you've named it, I think I understand really conceptually where you're going here, which is like in the back of my mind as the founder, like, I know how to do that. What's wrong with them? I used to do that. I can get that done. Like, get out of my way. I'll just roll up my sleeves if they don't know how to do it. And what they fail to kind of realize is that the organization that they now oversee, it's been many years, let's say, or at least several years since they've been in the trenches at that level doing that thing, that the organization is far more complex with far more systems and processes and relationships and interdependencies that exist. And it is not as simple as what it once was. They no longer can use the computer systems and software or, understand how to leverage AI or whatever else is going on inside the business. And this magical thinking is that the resources, as you say, are there, that it is still inherently as simple as it once was, but it's really not.
Yeah. That, Jonathan, is just a wonderful framing of that answer. And I've seen this play out numerous times in my career. And I think you just really, really nailed it on the head. I was a founder. I was in that place where I did everything. I wrote the Access database for our little company, tweaked it over the years. I was the guy underneath the table connecting all the computers for our customer service team. I was a writer. I did it all. And you're absolutely right. Well, what's the matter with you? Why can't you do five things at the same time? So, continuing with this theme, Jonathan, let's suppose you have a chief executive officer sitting in front of you right now who has exhibited these magical thinking behaviors in the past and has self-identified that they have an issue. What's your coaching advice to help them minimize this behavior? How would you advise them in striking an appropriate balance between realism and the necessity for them to continue to dream big and push the organization to new heights?
Yeah, I think from time to time you can invite a CEO to, own what their journey has been but that they need to go and listen. They need to kind of go on a listening journey. And I spend a lot of time helping people with curiosity. It's really a muscle. And to go back to, the front line or the folks doing the work, and it might be 2 or 3 or 4 layers down into the organization, and just observe. Just go with the metaphorical clipboard and take notes. Don't solve problems. Don't get involved. Don't get your hands dirty. Just try and learn about what's going on. Because, of course, CEOs really do know everything, especially if they're founders, really do know the DNA, the history, the complexity of the marketplace. They have it cold. But the thing that they don't always know is how everything's functioning day to day anymore, because it's not their job. So before they cast aspersions and redesign everything and or, God forbid, roll up their sleeves and get involved, maybe they should just learn. So I often send CEOs on kind of learning journeys and just try to say, just show up and listen and just be present to it and allow it to wash over you, and then come back to what the next big thing is. Because maybe that dream that you've got about scaling out or adding the new thing in, or that new product line, or that new service, or that new element of your business that you really want to, that's the next horizon to push to. Maybe that's exactly the thing that'll push you over the edge if you don't know what's actually happening deep inside your organization anymore, because it's been a while since you've been there. And, you can tell CEOs all you want, like management, it can go up the chain. But I know that mostly they're saying to themselves, push harder, they'll get it done. And it can be quite devastating if we grow too quickly or we push too hard. I mean, turnover, quality issues, you name it, all kinds of risks.
Yeah. So I'm a organizational health and continuous improvement guy. My whole shtick is the balance between trust and accountability in organizations. And in continuous improvement, there's this concept of going to the Gemba, going to where the work actually happens. And leave your phone in your office. I love your, bring a physical clipboard, take notes, be curious. Curiosity is a muscle, as you describe, and exercise that muscle, and exercise the muscle of the ears, and really, so, as you say, soak it in. But definitely go to the Gemba, because after 3, 4, 5 years, a decade, especially for founders who have become CEOs, you don't know how the value stream functions. You have an idea of what it was like 10 years ago when you did it, but that's not how it happens anymore. So go to the Gemba. Excellent, I love that. Excellent advice. Jonathan, before we jump to a quick break, let's take a little detour. And I was curious about one of your board advisory positions. I'm a finance guy, University of Iowa finance professor. I'm keenly interested in improving the financial literacy of our population. What's the company that you advise, Cashco, and how do they help individuals in Canada build financial literacy?
Yeah, so Cashco Financial is based in Alberta, but it's got branches right across the country. I'm on the board of Cashco. Cashco has a mission to put 1 million Canadians on the path to financial health, and they do that through alternative lending processes. There's just so many Canadians that don't have access to regular banking, and they're considered high-risk borrowers. But they're our neighbors and our friends, and they're people that still need access to credit, and they need to rebuild credit scores, and they need to rebuild the tools in their life that can allow them to participate in the economy with a greater calmness than often that their lives will allow. And so Cashco is both a lender but also a teacher, and it helps folks with all of those things, with products and tools and support systems to help them, move along the journey from really wild swings and needing to borrow at high interest rates to moving down a kind of pathway of calmness and more reassurance, so they can re-enter the system and get a bank account again, maybe one day get a credit card, maybe one day begin to save and participate like the rest of us do.
Yeah. So there are a number of these kinds of institutions are in pockets around the world, but we absolutely need more of this and not less. And I'm so proud to hear that you're contributing as a board member there. Jonathan, we're going to take a really short commercial break, and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Andy here. I've got a new podcast I'd like to introduce you to, The Saturday Morning Muse. Start your weekend with me by exploring topics that span leadership, business management, education, and other musings that are designed to support your journey of personal and professional continuous improvement. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. And we're back with Jonathan Bennett talking about leadership, magical thinking, change management, and mergers and acquisitions. We talked about leadership magical thinking before the break to set the stage for a discussion regarding mergers and acquisitions. Now, I've seen many leaders convince themselves that mergers and acquisitions is all about the numbers and extracting value by eliminating redundancies and leveraging quote-unquote synergies. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my eyes roll in the back of my head. So, suppose that you have the chief financial officer or the head of corporate development of an acquisitive corporation sitting in front of you right now. How do you help them see the benefits of focusing as much on the people side of the equation as they do the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, it's essential. Anybody that's been anywhere near a merger or an acquisition or an integration, if you're in the nonprofit or public sectors, you know that it's not just a change journey. It's a grief journey. It's an emotional journey that you go on. I think that there's lots of folks out there that know a ton about, evaluating companies and EBITDA and how to construct and design, good deals. I'm not an expert in that. I've been through it lots of times. But what I do think I know something about is how workplaces go through that emotional journey. And what I usually tell leaders is that it's going to last way longer than you think, and it's going to start later than you think it's going to start. And that's because, for a good reason, mostly the kind of conversations around mergers and acquisitions, they end up in a kind of vault, with the leaders of maybe two companies in discussions with one another and lawyers and all this stuff. No one is talking about what's going on there. But what is happening is a period of time is passing. And so those leaders are digesting the potential. They're calibrating themselves about change, what it means for them, what it means for the people that work for them. And they're going through a kind of processing. And that's totally normal. As humans, we do that kind of work, kind of psychological work all the time. And at some point, the big reveal happens. Ta-da! And we tell everybody. And, it's a press release or it's an announcement, depending on the size of the company. It could even be, with regulators. Like, who knows how big the company is. But, some moment happens. Now the clock starts ticking for everybody else. So if it's been a year in development or 9 months in development, those leaders, those people on the inside have had lots of time, lots of processing time. And then they announce it and they think it's such a great thing. And they wonder why in 2 weeks, everybody is still in shock and they're not where they are emotionally. And it's just very confusing. Like, what do you mean? I mean, it's such a great thing. Now they've, whatever they've talked themselves into, they haven't done any kind of emotional labor of what it's going to be like for these folks. And I'm like, you should be thinking it's going to take those people just as long as it took you to get to where you are. I mean, it stands to reason, right? Yeah. And, at the start, you've got a workforce that is only looking at everything through the lens of, me, right? They can't hear corporate advantage or scalability or my career will be better or all these potential upsides to this, merger or acquisition that's happening. That's not what's going on for them. They're like, what about my kids? What about my family? What about my mortgage? What about my job? What about my colleagues and my team and this thing that I'm working on next week or next month, or this piece of software that I just spent a year getting into place? Like, their head is in their own space because they're a person. And it just gets lost on way too many leaders that are doing that kind of work, and the potential risks and damage of them not spending enough time with their people and helping them along that emotional journey is that they will leave, and that some of that locked in value that you thought was there will not be there. And we all know that lots of mergers and acquisitions actually are not successful long term. They don't extract the value because the people leave, because the intellectual capital walks out the door, because that emotional and psychological safety that was needed to have those people stay attached and transfer their loyalty and allegiances to a new entity, whether it's, Corporation B becoming now a part of Corporation A, or A and B becoming Corporation C, whatever it is, they need time to do that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And worse yet, in some instances, they're usually small, on the smaller side of things, but your people will actually start to work against the aims of the goals of the transaction, and the active, disengagement turns into active disengagement, and you have people saying, well, over my dead body is all this work that I've done going to get transitioned to some new fancy pants manager that's coming from the other side. It's a real danger. So how do you view the role of change management practices in supporting more successful corporate mergers and acquisitions?
Well, I mean, it's essential. I just think that the humanistic element of a change process is often put at the bottom of the Gantt chart in a blue bar, going from the whole way across. Communicate. Like, it's not enough. It's not enough granular detail there. People need lots and lots of time to process, and so you need to communicate up front what's going to happen. You need to communicate as it's happening. There are lots of things that won't change, and people forget to communicate those. Very calming to people hearing a long list of things that will stay the same, by and large, as far as we know. And communicate through the change and giving people lots of chance to feedback on how it's affecting them, on the risks that they see, and including people in that change is really key.
So, Jonathan, what I'm hearing in the back of my mind as you're talking about change management around acquisitions is that the leader really needs to exercise compassion, the ability to be empathetic, plus the willingness and ability to help somebody through that journey. Would you agree with that approach? Yeah,
I mean, it's a leadership moment, isn't it? When we're bringing two organizations together, especially if you think about, what often happens is like the bigger guy, it's the smaller guy, or the competition is now, you're now asked to work for the previous corporation that you were fighting against. I mean, these are really hard sets of dynamics to just sort of like flip on a switch. It's not that simple. So I think compassion is huge. I think empathy is huge, and getting leaders to just slow it down and to walk for a little while in the shoes of the folks that are going through the change at the shop floor level or the service delivery level is you just can't do enough of that. A bit like going back to Gemba, right? Like, it's that same idea of being with the people, doing the change work with them, and just allowing them the time and space to just get through it.
Yeah, just imagine, as a leader, just sit back and imagine what your people are going through. For years and years, they've heard that company is the devil, they're evil, and all of a sudden, we're going to work with them? What?
They're going to be my boss?
Yeah. What? Anyway, so as we start to close things out, I have to ask, you've written 7 books. Can you give us a glimpse into your literary work?
Sure. I can give you a little glimpse. It's a bit off topic on some level, but it's a part of who I am. I had an English degree, and all I wanted to do was to write literary fiction and poetry, and so I did. And here's the thing, folks: poetry doesn't pay. So I needed to find a way to kind of build a career that went alongside it, and I was really fortunate. I got to write a bunch of novels, and I won some awards, and I got widely reviewed and traveled to festivals across the country, and it was really just a huge part of my life for a very long time. I still write, but I'm very focused on the other things that I do. I'm also a dad, and I have lots of things going on in my life, but it remains a really important component of who I am, and what I think is important in the world.
Thanks. Our regular listeners will recognize that multidimensionality is really important for personal growth and professional growth. Bringing a part of you that's outside the world of work really helps with those creativity and those curiosity muscles that we were talking about earlier. So thank you so much for sharing. Jonathan, as we close things out, 2 lightning round questions I like to ask my guests. I give you access to a time machine, and you can send a message to an earlier version of Jonathan Bennett. What's the message, and what previous version of yourself do you send it to?
Go to law school. That would, because I've paid a lot of legal fees over the years, and every time I do, I'm like, why didn't I go to law school? That'd be one. I can do the obvious one, like buy Apple in the 90s, Jonathan. Maybe that. I think I just mentioned I'm a dad. So my eldest is autistic, and it was a difficult journey for us as a family early on. And I think I would probably send myself a note, hang in there, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Excellent advice. We are all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
I have a really interesting project right now that is very personal to me. I live, as you mentioned, in Peterborough, Ontario. This is Williams Treaty territory. It's traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people. And I'm the co-chair of a board of directors of a local community health center. And we have a shared Indigenous, non-Indigenous governance model that we're building together. And I'm just learning a lot from my colleagues that are Indigenous, how they think about decolonization, how they think about the world and living in harmony with nature. And their culture is something that is just a real gift that I've built enough relationships to be able to go on this journey. And that's a huge piece of my life right now.
Yeah. What I'm hearing in the back of my mind, and both congratulations and thank you for that work. It's very, very important. But to make sure that you're talking to people who don't look like you, talk like you, think like you, to ensure that you don't fall into a fixed mindset as an individual. So I try to do the same. It is a journey. Thank you for sharing, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can folks learn more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me online at clearlythen.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn, so you can search for me on LinkedIn, send me a DM. I always like to meet new people, and if you think the kind of thing that I am talking about and you'd like to book some time with me, please go ahead. Happy to chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your contributions to our listeners and to the show. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Same. Thanks so much.
All right. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as YouTube. If you look out in the early versions of this show, Jonathan's dog was wandering around in the background. Fun fact. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your colleagues. We will see you next time on The Balancing Act. This show was produced by Nicholas Temte.